Hello and welcome everyone. It is the Brotastic Bro and we have reached time for another video in this 48 Laws of Power series. Before we get started, I do ask you to subscribe, as not only will you learn something, you will enjoy hearing about the subtleties of not only your favorite athletes, but I plan to cover some of the most iconic sports moments of all time in this series. That being said, we are currently on law number 13 of this 48 Laws of Power series, which means we still have 35 more videos to go in this series. So again, stay tuned and subscribe because we got a lot more to go. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, the 13th Law of Power is when asking for help. Always appeal to people's self-interest, never to one's mercy or gratitude. See, the Boston Celtics were a team at the time. This is relatively speaking, as this was about 10 years ago at the time. The Boston Celtics were on top of the world, theoretically, entering the beginning of the last decade after winning an NBA title and also coming up close to winning another one, although they typically fell just short, such as losing to the Lakers. However, that would become a theme of this Boston Celtics squad, as they also would become known for getting eliminated by LeBron's Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals in an embarrassing fashion when LeBron's legacy was on the line and he dropped 45 points on their head. And I'm not gonna lie to you, that is one of the games that really would turn the tide on the legacy of a young LeBron James. However, this particular season had a similar end to the few that were before it. And as I've covered before in a previous video while speaking about the Boston Celtics, they were in a clearly futile position when it came to their hopes at winning another NBA title. With even the other great teams in the Eastern Conference ignoring Boston for a moment, there was also a rising Indiana Pacers team, which at that time consisted of a young Paul George amongst veterans like Lance Stevenson, David West, and Roy Hibbert, who were just completely no match whatsoever for the historically dominant Big Three Miami Heat featuring LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. Similar to what happened in the book with two war-torn city-states of ancient Greece competing to ally with Athens. Once Ray Allen's contract position was up with the Boston Celtics, he was put in a position where he then had two rival teams competing for the championship. See, at a certain point, he had to make a decision on what he was going to do moving forward with his career. And many people, myself included, just assumed automatically that he would retain his loyalty until he retires and he was going to re-sign with the Boston Celtics and run it back and try to win another ring with an aging Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett by his side. However, as I previously stated, he knew already that it was a futile situation and they could not beat the Miami Heat. The time finally came that a decision had to be made, and he would have to put pen on paper and sign a contract to continue playing in the NBA. He had to sit there and weigh out his options. See, both teams, being the Boston Celtics and the Miami Heat, wanted to use his services on the basketball court, as even with his age, he was still a talented, savvy veteran with aspirations to win another championship ring, and they respected his accomplishments he had done In particular, they respected his three-point shooting ability and all the records he had put up. And on top of that, it was a change in culture as they challenged him to improve his shooting as well. See, they were both championship contenders at the time, and both of them knew and respected how talented Ray Allen was, and both of them placed offers for him to be on their squad, albeit not as a starting player. See, the problem for the Boston Celtics is that they just had absolutely no answer for LeBron, D-Wade, and Chris Bosh, and the reality is that even with the services of Ray Allen as a member of their team at the time, which I may add is also at a reduced role due to them wanting to prioritize younger players as they prepare for making steps towards the future without a big three, and they still wanted him to take on that six-man type of role, a role he was already frustrated about. Don't get me wrong, he knew he was going to be a six-man going into Miami, but if you're going to go into a situation as a six-man, you're going to want to actually feel as if you could win in that situation. And the Miami Heat already kept beating his team every single year in the playoffs anyway. And I don't want to just say he looked at it as a simple case of, well, if I can't beat him, I might as well join him, because that's not even really what made him a winner either. He looked at the situation and he saw that he was not going to win another title with the Celtics. Meanwhile, he was already not in the position he wanted to be with, having to deal with a reduced role, and he was not buying into the culture of the Boston Celtics. The reality is, as good as that Big Three super team was, they won the trophy their first year, and they never won another NBA title after that. See, he could sit there and try to somehow pull off a miracle to make them win a second trophy, or he could go to join the Miami Heat, which are already more than likely the team that he would just end up watching lifting up the Larry O'Brien trophy from the couch at the end of the year anyway if he didn't join them. He also realized he was able to go into a situation and finally be amongst a winning culture again, and a team that pretty much already have everything they need to succeed without him anyway, which puts him in what is honestly a perfect situation for any aging veteran player who may not have the legs under him to keep it up much longer at a high pace, but can still perform at a high level. Think about it. He was in a position where he really wasn't needed for anything at times, as the team was already good enough to blow out several weaker teams. However, he knew he could still ball. He also knew he could still have something to give. He knew he still had more in the tank, and he wanted to give more to the game he loves and has dedicated so much hard work into throughout his life. But now that you're caught up to speed on the setting of the situation leading up to Ray Allen's decision, it's time to learn just about how the 13th law of power came into play. As is always the situation in most laws in this books, the motivation is superiority. And at that time, for Ray Allen, superiority means playing for a team that can win an NBA championship. It's also important to remember to not confuse your needs with the needs of others, as well as not being trapped in your own wants and desires. That's right, I'm talking to you, Boston Celtics. Also, it is important to not assume that because they had success in the past together, he would automatically align with them and try to run it back with them to win another title just because they did it before. See, what Boston's mistake was in that situation is that they appealed to Ray Allen's gratitude as opposed to his self-interest. They expected him to stay loyal when in reality he knew that the loyalty would not result in the superiority he's chasing, of winning another NBA championship. The Miami Heat did the exact opposite of what the Boston Celtics did. They appealed to his self-interest by putting him in a position where he knows that if he does what he has to do as a role player off the bench, basically being a 3-and-D player, they knew that he was going to be in an opportunity to try and win another ring. And the lesson of the law is that people are motivated by themselves to do what's best for themselves. Just to reiterate, the lesson that we learned from the 13th law of power is that the Miami Heat knew what Ray Allen was motivated by. However, the Boston Celtics instead only chose to appeal to his gratitude. Oh, we've been here before, let's run it back. They didn't stop to think, oh, he could just go sign a contract somewhere else. And with that having been said, I want you to also know that Ray Allen took less money to join the Miami Heat. They signed him to their mid-level exception, putting him at just about $9 million a year, leaving everyone in Boston feeling betrayed because Boston offered him $12 million on their contract. He was offered $9 million to play 2 years. I hope I didn't say in 1 year. My bad if I did. He was offered $9 million to play 2 years in Miami, or $12 million to play 2 years in Boston. And even though he could have made more money, he knows what's really important. He knows when it comes down to it, years down the line, when people look back on his legacy, the amount of NBA rings he has won will play a factor and will play a huge role. So it was hugely important he tried to get another ring. That being said, thank you guys, man. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out your day to watch my content, man. And if I still have your attention, I just ask that you leave a like on this video to help with the algorithm, and subscribe so you can see future videos like this one. Keep in mind, this is only the 13th law. If you haven't seen the 12 prior to this, I urge you go back and watch them, as they're really good. And it started out kind of poor, but you'll definitely see the progression as it get better as I went along. And that being said, man, subscribe. We got 35 more videos to go. Stay tuned. You will not want to miss this content. But that's all I got for today, man. God bless you guys. I love you all. I appreciate everyone who watches my videos, man.